Okay, welcome back. So in our last video, we copy pasted over a lot of code to generate and create this Gatsby front end blog. Today, we're going to look at how the code actually works, how the Gatsby code actually works to create this. If we look at the home page here, you see you have this layout with the nav bar, the header, then you have content cards, then you have the footer. If I go to a category page like this one, it's pretty much the same layout. Everything on top stays the same. The title changes and the content cards change, but the footer is the same, the top's the same. Same thing if I go into an individual blog post, I have that same top, I have that same footer, but the content inside is changed. That's because all of these different types of pages are using the same layout component and then just changing the content that's inside of it. So let's look at the layout component right here. Now, the first thing I want you to notice is that we import a few things here from Gatsby. Okay, we're importing a link component, which we use to create links. And then we also import this GraphQL function. Its GraphQL function is what we call a tag function. And we also import this useStaticQuery. This is a custom hook. And the GraphQL and useStaticQuery hook are going to be used to fetch the data from Strapi, right, or from any other source that you're using with Gatsby. And we do that right here. So we're creating this layout component. We do pass in some props, right? We pass in the page title, and then we pass in children. Okay, so we know we're using children. Let's look at the Index.js. You can see that here we're calling the layout component, and as children, we're passing in this unordered list, and that contains all of the different blog post cards here that we're filling in. So, right, these are all children inside the layout component. And then here, the page title prop, we're putting in home page, right? So if we go to the layout component, and I'll scroll down real quick, there's an H2 here, and here's where we put in the page title prop, right? So that's what we're getting here. This is that H2. So if, for example, if I went here and I changed the string we're passing in here, maybe I make it main page, you'll see now it changes to main page. Okay, so this is just passing in a prop. That's not anything special. What is special is how we're able to grab all of the information to dynamically generate these category links up top here. So let's look at how we do that. So what we do is we're going to be using this useStaticQuery custom hook from Gatsby, and we're going to pass in this very strange construction. We said that this GraphQL is a tag function. What that means is you add this template literal afterwards, and GraphQL is able to basically consume whatever's inside this template literal, and process it and create a query based on this. And so if we take this and we paste that into our graphical interface here and press play, you can see what we get as a result. So Strapi is going to return to us this object, right? This object gets returned to us right here. Let me close this. And so you can see what we do is we're going to use this. We're going to use the different categories that get returned, and they have the name, the slug, and the ID. So we're going to use that data. So let's see how we use that. We have our header, great, H1, Strapi Gatsby blog right here, and then an unordered list. The first list item is going to be the home link, which is right here, and that's going to our root URL path, so that's perfect. And then after that, we map over this data here to dynamically generate the other three links. So let's take a look at how this is going to work. Okay, so we're taking data. Remember, this entire query is returned, and we're saving it as this data variable. So we're going to take data dot all Strapi category dot nodes, and then we're going to map over that. Right. So data dot all Strapi category dot nodes, and this is an array And this is an array of all of the categories, right? So what we do is then we create a list object for each category. And inside each one, we have a unique ID. So that's going to be good for the key. And then we're going to create a link. And this link is going to go to the URL path is going to use the slug, right here. And then the text inside the link is going to be the name, which is what we get right here. And so you can see now how we're able to dynamically generate these things. And if we press on Strapi, we get Strapi inside the URL here, because that was the slug that we got back, right? This contains all of our Strapi posts. So that's sort of the interesting part of the layout. The rest of it is not interesting. It's just got some text here, right? We're passing in the page title as a prop. We've got the children. And then we've got some footer data, which is just static data here. So that's the layout. Let's look at Index.js right now. So Index.js is also going to be importing a link and GraphQL from Gatsby, but there's no useStaticQuery, right? We had that over here. We no longer have that. And the reason why is because we do queries a little bit different in pages. So layout, if you remember, layout was a component, while Index.js is a page, right? So when we do page queries, we don't need to use that useStaticQuery. Instead, underneath where you define the page here, you can also export this query here using GraphQL. And so that's actually where we fetch the data for pages, okay? You export a constant known as query, and then you use the GraphQL tag function, and now you pass in your template literal query here. So if you want to, we can now take this and go back to our graphical interface, and we can fetch the data here. And so you see what we're going to be getting back. We're going to be getting back all of the Strapi posts, .nodes, which is going to be an array of all of the posts, and inside each post, we're going to get an author, and then for the author, we get the avatar image, we get the author's name, then we get the cover for the post, the date, the description, all this information we get back, and we're going to use that to generate these postcards. And then we're just going to map over all of those nodes to do that. So if we look inside here, inside of our unordered list that we're passing in as children to the layout component, you can see that's exactly what we're doing, right? We're getting our data.allStrapiPosts.nodes, then we map over them, okay? And as we map over them, we're able to generate our links, right? So these are links over here, and we're going to be able to grab the correct URL. We're sending it to the slug. So if we click here, we're sending it to the slug, right? The title, we get the title of the post. Inside here, we're going to get the URL to the cover image, so we're able to put that as the source. The avatar image, we get that as well, right? The source is the author's avatar. All of this information we're able to fetch using this query right here. Now, how are we actually getting that in? It's a little bit strange. So what's happening is every time Gatsby generates a page, it's going to run a query, and it's going to pass the results of that query as props into the page. So that's why we actually have this data here destructured from the props. And if we put in props here, and then we just destructure the data out of that, and then we console log our props here. Let's take a look at our console. Okay, so our console is returning this props object. I'm not sure what that is, but let's take a look at this props object. So think about it this way. In a normal vanilla React app, the routing is going to be different. In a vanilla React app, you're going to have an index.html file here, and it's going to be empty. There's just going to be a root node, and then that root node is going to be injected with content with the JavaScript file, right? So React is going to create a JavaScript file that dynamically injects content into the root node of of a blank HTML file. That's not how Gatsby works. The way Gatsby works is you create these JavaScript files under the pages folder, and for each of these pages, Gatsby is going to generate an actual HTML file that's not empty. It's going to have all of the HTML content in it. And that's what the static site generator does. It's going to generate an HTML file for each URL path that you have in your pages. And that's going to make it very fast for people to go to a URL and get all of the HTML right away. They don't have to download the entire giant JavaScript package for the entire site. They can just get the HTML content right away. So that's what makes Gatsby very fast. And so it generates these pages, HTML pages, a little bit differently. And it's going to always pass in props into the Index.js here, into any of these pages. You're going to get props passed in by Gatsby. Even though we're not calling the index page component anywhere, Gatsby is going to use it to generate an HTML file. When it does that, it is going to be passing in props. So that's what we're seeing here in the console. We're seeing the props that Gatsby pushes in. So one thing that always passes in like a page context. In this case, it's empty, but it's also going to pass in the data. And that is the result of what we queried for over here, right? So inside this data, we have all Strapi posts, then we have all the nodes, right? And then inside the nodes, we're going to have each post, and inside each post, we're going to have the author, all this stuff. All of the results of this query is what we get inside the props.data. And so that's why we originally just destructured the data directly here, which is, a pretty normal thing to do. We don't need any of the other props information. We just need the data in order to populate the information for these cards. So I hope that makes sense. That's sort of how Gatsby works. It's a little bit different from vanilla.js because we are statically generating independent HTML pages. Let's take a look at the individual post page next. This is going to be interesting. Okay, so on the individual post page, as you can see, the name of this file is strapipost.slug.js, and that means inside the curly braces, it means it's going to be dynamically generating a new HTML page for every single Strapi post, and the path to get to that is going to be the slug. So that's sort of what this means, because whatever's inside this file name before the .js, that becomes the pathway to get to that page. So just as a quick example, if I was to create a new page in here and call it amazing.js, and I was to now just put something in here, say this is amazing. Now what I could do was, I have to import React. Okay, let me import React. Okay, now if I import React and I now go to localhost, right, /amazing, I'm going to get, it's preparing my requested page. And there we go. I get, this is amazing, right? So whatever I typed in here. So the point is that this page, the path to it is /amazing because that's the name of the JavaScript file, okay? Now for these other ones, these are going to generate a whole bunch of individual HTML pages with all sharing the path, but where the path is going to be the Strapi post slug. Okay, so I hope that makes sense right there. Let me delete this real fast. And now I'm going to have to just recompile because I deleted that. Okay, got rid of that sample page. So let's take a look at more detail inside this blog post. So how does this work? Again, I am similar to the index page. I'm only taking in the link and the GraphQL here from Gatsby because this is going to run a page query, right? And so this query is going to run every single time. And this one is different because I am getting an ID variable here, and then I am filtering the Strapi post. I'm going to get it where the ID of the Strapi post is equal to this ID right here. And so that's going to get me only the information for this specific page, and it's able to render it using the slug for this specific page. And if I go here, I get only this specific information for that piece of content, for that post. So it's a little bit interesting. It's like, where does this ID come from? Well, it turns out that every time you run a single item like this, Gatsby is going to return an ID. And I'll show you where this comes from. So I'll do this trick that we did before. I'll just pass in the entire props object and then deconstruct it out here. And that way we can console log the entire props object. So let's do that. And let's take a look at the console. So here's the props object. And what you want to see here in this case, we have a page context that is being passed in as props, and the page context contains the ID, and I believe this is the ID that we are grabbing right here. We're also getting the slug, so if we wanted to query using slug, we could do that, or normally you just query with the ID because you always get that, and you can't query for anything else because that's not in the page context. But so basically Gatsby takes this JavaScript file and it runs a query for all of the Strapi posts, all of the nodes inside that, and then it's going to get the page context for each one. It's going to have an ID, and it's going to allow you to take that ID in here, accept it as a variable. This is just type string, and then you use that variable here as a filter to match it for the Strapi post ID, and then you get the data for that individual Strapi post as it generates that one page. So it's a kind of a bunch of steps, but the end result is that you get all of this data, right? You're going to get the author, you're going to get the author's avatar, his author's name, category slug, all of the content. You're going to get all of this coming out, and you're going to be able to use it to populate everything you have here, right? So we're able to pass in as props to the page title, props for the layout. We're going to get data.strapipost.title, right? So that's the title here. Likewise, we get the cover image, we get the alt text, we'll get the title here, we'll get the date right here, we'll get the avatar image, right? The Strapi post author avatar, right? So that here is here, and then we get all of the content that we need. Over here, notice that we are now getting the HTML. We're not getting Markdown here, we're getting HTML, and that's because we're using this child Markdown remark. Remember, this is that plugin that we installed last video, that Markdown remark plugin that converts the Markdown into HTML. So we're able to render all of this lovely Markdown we typed in as actual HTML and display it correctly in the web page. So that's sort of how this works. It's not straightforward, because you have to sort of understand how this query works, but it does work. And the slug, the category page works the same way, right? You have a page query at the end, and you are passing, you're always going to get this ID, so you can get that ID and then match it to that category ID, and then get all the data that you need for there, and that will allow you to grab all of the content data from Strapi to populate these cards. The only other thing I want to mention is that all of these pages, they also have another export at the end here, and that's your head. And the head is going to tell you what the name of that web page is. So here it's AI, Strapi Gatsby blog site. So you're getting the category name dynamically and then adding in Strapi Gatsby blog site, right? For the post, you also have this head, right? Here you're putting the title. So if we go here, we've got the title over there, dynamically inserted, and then Strapi Gatsby blog, which is off the screen. And then, of course, the homepage is the same way. You're going to have a head. In this case, it's just a static head. It's just going to say homepage. There it is, homepage dash Strapi Gatsby blog. Okay, so that is a brief explanation about how the code is actually working here. And I think that should hold over for now. In the next video, we're going to actually start deploying this so it's not just running locally on your computer. I'll see you then.